fishing in the Catskills.
New DEC.
Haven't been at many of our meetings.
No.
We are stormwater
We
coordinator.
missed one because the conflict was
part of
the
development.
engineer and so.
So we have people.
Bullet points on there?
Yeah, let me, I
Because you
can.
could
I
share
don't think
it
I
with
did.
the palette.
That's what I'm saying. Then he can read out, yeah.
Gee, we haven't talked on the phone for like 10 minutes.
I know.
I don't know.
Good, yourself? Thanks for bringing the good weather.
Yeah, right?
Are you in charge of this?
Outside all day.
He's in charge of everything.
Oh, my God.
Except for the shad flies, or am I the only one being eaten alive?
Oh, no.
No,
Inside?
What kind of-
Shad flies, or that's what I'm calling
What
them.
is a shaft line?
It's when the shad fly, the shad's trees are blooming.
Okay.
I
They're
never
blooming
heard
right
that
now,
expression
so
before.
Yeah.
they're like little gnats, kind of,
Okay.
but a little bigger than
I thought the
that.
shad was the
Okay.
fish that comes upstream in the Hudson just in the spring to
Outside
spawn.
for 5-10 minutes and I'm
What do I
already.
Is this the first year
They
you've
used
had
to
them?
shed flies. I don't know.
They've been around, yeah.
Maybe they're flying fish.
Maybe.
It must be territorial.
I don't know.
Ah, Mr. Snyder. And get on the truck.
Come on, David. Hey, Ken, how are you?
Good.
Hey, Michael.
Hi, Jeff.
How are you?
I'm well, and you?
Good, thanks.
Yeah.
It's 6:59.
6:59, all right.
Clock is on.
Clock is on.
Yeah, that's slow.
Who wants the affidavits of service? Somebody had asked for those from Jesse. You know, the secretary?
Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
For the mailing?
Yeah, the mailing.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, still 6:59.
Still 6:59.
It's a long minute.
Yeah,
7
yeah.
o'clock.
7
All right.
o'clock, all right. All right, 7 o'clock, could we please rise for the pledge? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome to the special meeting of the Village of Pawling Zoning Board of Appeals, Wednesday, March 11th, 7 o'clock.
May 11th.
May 11th, right, thank you. That's where you're sitting there, right. You do the roll?
Tom Zorke's not here, Nicholas Worley,
Here?
Ann Hardman. Here. Freddie DeVito.
Here.
Michael Cube.
Here. All right, so, the one item on the agenda for this evening, for the special meeting, is Hinchinberry and Eastern Hay. We have
Mr. Chairman,
like to present first.
Mr. Chairman, my name's Kenneth M. Stenger.
Mhm.
I'm involved in this project in the effort to relocate this use from the village into the town of Pawling. And my client Kelly will speak to it, but my client has spent several millions of dollars acquiring a location in the town of Pawling to move his business operation out of the village, which ultimately is the best solution for everyone here. And I was working with the applicant over the weekend in my office, and I saw something that I brought to the attention of Mr. Daniels, and now I will bring to the attention of this board, because it raises an issue, a predicate issue as to, we lawyers get stuck with appearances or the possibility of a conflict, and we have a whole book of rules about what to do when that happens. But I just wanted to show you what I saw, so you would not think that this is something that I made up at the 11th hour. I literally saw this Sunday, because I had Kelly in my office reviewing the application, because on May 16th, we go in front of the planning board in the town. And Kelly can talk to you a little bit more about that, but I'd like to, can I approach?
Yeah, please.
So, this is the plan that, got it, that Kelly and I reviewed Sunday morning, and, yeah, if you're a member, I think you should come take a
Yeah,
look.
everybody should see
All right?
this.
So, this is Route 22, this property was the old Agway building.
Mhm.
Okay, so, Chris went out and spent a pile of money to buy this parcel. It's all dressed in yellow. And we do know that we have the zoning administrator saying that, over there, that the use that we propose, which is, to do the retail out of here, to do some storage in the back of the building, and park the trailers over there. They're not on a permanent basis, but, you know, you gotta park them in between where they're taking rides out to deliver the hay. Over here, that this is a permitted use under the zoning, the use of the property is permitted, and that the, use of the, parking area, not as a permanent storage area, but as an interim parking area for the trailers to come in, take their loads and leave, is permitted. Now, you still have to go through the process. This will require, and there's an application in front of the planning board for a site plan amendment. Won't go into detail on that, except to say that our first meeting with the full board, there's been a preliminary meeting, will be on May 16th. There'll be some issues discussed on that day about whether or not a full public hearing is needed or not. And so I can't tell you the calendar. I'd like to be able to tell you the calendar, when we'll be done, but I can't say that. But when I looked at this map with Kelly, I saw that this parcel over here was owned by a Daniels Family Trust, which is his mom's trust. And I don't know who the beneficiaries are, don't know. I just saw that, and that caught my eye, because that's the first time I saw it. I wasn't involved in the acquisition. I wasn't involved when they purchased. And I said, well, what is that, Kelly? And she said, well, that's the Daniels Trust. They own that property. And they used to own a piece of the property that we just bought. And I said, well, what piece was that? And she drew a line here in the green. And as you can see, that green line goes right through where the parking is proposed to take place. And I said, all right, what else is new here? Because this was all new to me. And I said, what's this? And she goes, well, our property has a right of an easement across those properties. Now, none of this was created by anybody now. This has all happened a long time ago. So then I pulled the deeds, and the deed is from the Daniels Agency. This piece here gets conveyed to 80s Associates, which I think is the old Agway. But this area here has a reservation in it for parking. It's not clearly drafted. It doesn't say how many cars, but it clearly says that in making this conveyance, the owner of this parcel reserves a right to park on this parcel, and the owner of this parcel cannot obstruct it. So I have those deeds. I'm going to give them to you, but so I looked at that and I said, okay, well, that's a problem, Kelly. Why isn't it, why haven't you drawn this and shown this problem? And she said, well, why is that a problem? And I said, because your fence here that you propose to put up, which is the town would like us to have, could be construed as an obstruction. You know, have you talked to Dave about this? Is this something that was of interest? Because things that get created 40 years ago maybe don't have a value anymore. Maybe this is not an issue. So I looked at that and but it's an open question, right? It's just this: do you want to assert this right, whatever it is, or do you want to say I don't want it? But it's an issue because if the owner of the easement says I want to assert it, then you can see you have an issue with the plan. If the owner of the easement says I don't need to assert it anymore, I'm very happy with the current use of the property that's come into existence in the last 40 years, because that's what we're talking about, right? 40 years ago. Then it's not a problem. I just don't know if it's a problem or not. So what I did is I sat down and I wrote a letter to Dave and I said, okay, we have a bit of a problem here because I'm gonna be here saying we wanna put our parking here. What do you wanna do about the parking easement? And I said to you, David, I said, first of all, I can't tell you, this is Sunday afternoon when I saw this. If you can just bear with me for 1 second. You can just hold that for me. Got it. Thank you. So, this is the copy of the deed that I want to put in the record that reserves the parking area. So that's from the Daniels Agency to 80s Associates, and it's to conveyance out, and then on the second page of the deed, it says, let me just see if I can make that happen. My hands are so dry. There we go. On the first page, I'm sorry, it says at the bottom, it says reserving to the grantor, who is the Daniels Agency. And listen, I want to make this clear that there's nothing wrong here. This is all fine and perfect above board, but it's got consequences 40 years later. Potentially, my obligation is to bring the question to you for you to determine.
Kenneth, I've got a question for you, because I think that there may be some confusion with jurisdiction here. You're giving us a fair amount of information, but this is not a village matter. This is actually a town board matter.
No,
and what we're really here to discuss tonight is the use of a property here within the village.
Let me tell you why, if I can finish my presentation.
Sure. I mean, I listened quite a bit, but I didn't want to interrupt you, but it appears to me that you're talking to us about town board matters.
I'll tie that up. You're absolutely correct. This is a planning board issue, but here is the problem for lawyers. The problem I run into, my family did development work, my brother does development work. Sometimes we find ourselves on the wrong side of history or in the middle of history. So this parking area now is controlled by the Daniels, by Mrs. Daniels and her lawyers, which are Daniels and Porco, which are your lawyers here tonight. And so the difficulty is that, the difficulty without any deliberate planning by anyone, I swear to you, I just saw this Sunday. The difficulty is that puts Dave on both sides of the deal. Unless I'm wrong. If there's no easement or it's not going to be an issue, then I'm wrong. Then you're not on both sides of the deal. But the problem is you've got a deed that the Daniels law firm has represented. You're in this picture as having an interest, and if that's your mom, you have an interest. And if you have an interest here, which is to give you free legal advice, not free, excuse me, good, solid legal advice, and I have no doubt that's what you get day in and day out here, but at the same token, if you have an interest in another issue that will affect this issue, our rules say that's a conflict. Not a conflict like a bad person conflict, but just like an ethical conflict. You can't be on both sides. So we want to move here as quickly as we can. If we move here as quickly as we can, we hope that the village will see that in good faith, that's the best way to address this. We've spent a pile of money getting here. I didn't know about this until Sunday. I wrote David and sent him a letter on Monday. Didn't hear from him, haven't heard from him yet. I'm sure he's probably waiting to tell me something. But I don't know what else to do except bring it to you and say, here is the problem. If you're gonna represent this interest in the town that can have an impact on our ability to move to the town and get out of the village, then you're in a bind, according to our rules. According to our ethical rules, you're in a bind because you can't be here advising the village as to what to do about this problem if you have some interest in how that problem may be addressed in the other location. It's just, that's where it puts us. And I need to emphasize, can't emphasize enough, this is history. This is history that has come home. And this is not an indication that anyone did anything wrong or is going to do anything wrong. It's about appearances. And that's what I bring to you. You're gonna be asked to deal with some legal issues in this application that I'm not gonna be presenting. That Mr. Rothschild's gonna, and you're gonna look to good, solid advice. And that solid advice is it's not just that the source is a good, solid advice. That source has to be, in our business, has to be free of any appearance of a conflict or a conflict. I'm not gonna quote you my associate gave me the ethical sections. I'm not reading that to you. Dave knows the ethical sections better than I do. But it's an issue. I don't tell you how to deal with it either. I mean, I think the argument could be made that the involvement of the law firm then creates the conflict now, or the argument could be made, deal with whatever this is going to be, or is there even an easement? Because if David says there's no easement here, then I asked that question yesterday. I don't have an answer. I have only the paper I've given you that there is an easement. And if he says, you know, I don't have an interest in that, we don't care about that parking easement anymore, then the issue is resolved. But I asked yesterday, I don't have an answer. I have an obligation to tell you, create that record. And I reiterate, I think you should consider it. I think you don't have to make a decision based on my speaking here tonight, or that you should consider this before you decide what you're gonna do here today, or tonight. That's all. That's what I'm asking, because it's now part of the record.
All right.
And when you make your decision, you want your record to be clear and free of any controversy, of any hint that there was something off. And the lawyers were in a bad position. We always get stuck on this higher level. I've been on the wrong end of it as well. It's not pleasant, and I know what I'm doing here tonight is not pleasant. I apologize for it not being pleasant, but I have an issue to present. Again, thank you very much. I just need you to know, want to repeat for the record one more time. I've had plenty of dealings with Mr. Daniels. Nothing here that all been good and all been professional. I have an obligation to present this to you for your consideration. This is not me saying that anything is done wrong here. What I am saying, however, if you proceed without looking at this issue carefully, what you decide may be put into question unless you have properly addressed that issue. Thank you very much. I'm gonna leave you with, I can leave the map, no?
Not that one.
Not this one? This one is all right, I'm gonna give you, all right.
Yeah, we can get a copy of this.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Stein.
All right, thank you very much. Dave?
Sure.
Where,
Yeah.
tell us where we go with this?
So first of all, Mr. Stanger is certainly entitled to whatever, no offense taken, but he assumes a lot of facts that are not correct, and he's assuming a hypothetical that is not correct. And I don't know what his motives are, or maybe I do, but that's first of all, the property is leased to AutoZone under a ground lease for the next 12 years, and then 20 years after that there are options. And that lease includes whatever appurtenances there might be, whether there's an easement or not an easement. And frankly, the easement's been in place for however many years. You can read the record. We don't have to say what it is, or, you know, it's not, I didn't draft it. It's not the model of clarity, but it is what it is. And whatever rights you have, you have. My parents are 91 years old, and they're not gonna be going down to the town. I'm not gonna be going to the town. The planning board, very competent planning board in the town, just as there is in the village, I'm sure they'll do the right thing. And my parents have no interest in getting involved in a squabble with the Johnson family, who they've known for their whole lives, all of them. And so they don't have it, right now they have no interest in the property because they've leased it. And, you know, I just saw, this is the first time I've seen the application. Whether they're gonna like the application or not, I couldn't tell you, but maybe they'll like it. They grew up in the village, both of them. And, you know, they may be happy to see the trailers go, I don't know. It's not something that we talk about. So, you know, so I wouldn't get involved in this even if it did happen, but I have no inclination from anybody in my family that there would be any kind of a dispute. And, you know, whatever that easement says, it says. You know, so there's no conflict here, none. And, you know, it's just, it's unfortunate that, you know, and the one thing that that does trouble me is you made these assumptions about, you asked me, well, what are you gonna, you know, you're gonna fight, he's gonna fight the development? You had no knowledge of what my position would be on that.
I didn't
or my
say
parents.
that.
You did.
Well,
You
I
did in the
not.
letter.
You're
You did,
assuming
Ken.
words that were
You
not
did.
said.
Well, you said a lot, you made a lot of assumptions, and, you know, it is what it is.
Just quote me accurately. Thanks.
You did. So I read your letter, so.
Dave, can I ask you a question?
Of course, yeah.
Do you or your firm have anything to do with legal representation for the town boards?
No.
Okay, so then you would not be involved at all with any decisions that those boards would be making on this particular parcel, which is a town jurisdiction property
I
parcel?
have great confidence in the town planning.
I just wanted to make sure that you would not be involved at all in advising them, because they're the ones who are gonna make decisions
They'll take
about.
care of
the
whatever they
parcel.
take care of, whatever they take into account or don't take into account, that'll be, I'm not going to that meeting, my parents aren't going to that meeting, and it'll be what it'll be. And whatever they decide to do with the parking, that easement is there. I mean, you do with it what you will. I'm not obligated to tell you what it is or isn't, you can figure that out. You can do a title search. So, yeah, so.
Thanks, that's the only question I
Okay.
had.
All right, thank you. Mr. Stanger, Mr. Rothschild,
Yeah.
how do you wish to proceed? Are you
So I-
satisfied with
No,
I have a few things, Michael, that I'd like to
Yes.
talk about. The first thing I want the board to know is, and Ken brought this up early on, was dealing with David Bardavid. Is that his name?
Jonathan.
Jonathan Bardavid. Thought that was weird. The notice of violation at the outset, which is the most important thing out of all of this that we're hearing tonight, is the notice of violation and the validity of the notice of violation. And I'm gonna tell you with certainty that it's fatal. It's a fatal error. I'm gonna explain it to you. And it's gonna be the choice of the board that you can either, you know, throw this out, right? Or you're not, then we're gonna end up in court. Somebody's gonna try to prosecute this, then we're gonna get it thrown out. And it'll probably be months later. But the fatal error here is very elementary. So elementary, I'm shocked that it happened. Your notice of violation from the village is signed by the village clerk. When Ken wrote a letter, right? So Ken writes a letter to Jonathan Bardavid on June 30th. Or I'm sorry, nope. I have them out of order. He writes on June 28th. And among other things, he says, finally, I note that the notice of violation is not signed by the building inspector and/or zoning code enforcement officer. It is signed by the village clerk. Unless there is something in the particular, something particular to the village code, which no one can see because it's not online, or otherwise publicly available, the village clerk does not have the authority to issue a notice of violation in zoning code. It's very clear, and think about it. How could the village clerk know about what the zoning code says? How could the village clerk, and with her duties, be the one to say you're in violation of the zoning code? It makes no sense. So Jonathan writes back, and Jonathan says, well, under 9859 of the village code, after the 5th day following written notice served by mail or personal service by the building inspector, or, and he puts in bold, the village clerk. This talks about serving the notice. This does not talk about issuing a notice of violation. It is fatal. It's elementary. And what you'll see is when you go to the zoning code, which was attached to the notice of violation. So there's 9859 that talks about penalties and offenses. That's what Jonathan was alluding to. That's where the village clerk or the building inspector can serve the violation. When you look above, so that's 9859. When you go to 9858, powers and duties of the building inspector. It shall be the duty of the building inspector to enforce the provisions of this chapter, the zoning code. It is not the village clerk. It's elementary. I mean, it's beyond. Now, you go to the village code, what role or what duties does the village clerk have? There's no mention. So you go to the village law of the state of New York. And you can read, Michael, you can read, the clerk of each village, subject to the direction and control of the mayor. And you can go down A, B, C, D, E, F, right? All of the duties of the village clerk. G, H, I, not one of them, and you can look, but not one of them discusses her ability to issue, and it makes sense. She can't issue a notice of violation. She can't sign that. She doesn't know it. It's silly. It's silly. Now, like I said, we deal with it tonight, right?
Right.
You throw it out, we start all over. Or you say, you know what, Jeff, you're full of hot air. We go to court, which will probably end up in another court, not in the town of Pawling, which eventually it'll get sent to the county court. The county court will then send it to another court, probably Dover. I'll go to be Judge Fusco. I'll say, Judge Fusco, this is fatal. This is simple. Judge Fusco will look at it. He'll say, you're right. He'll throw it out. This is going to be like July or August or September. Or we can deal with it tonight. I'm willing to extend an olive branch. My client is willing to extend an olive branch. He's been working hard to do it. He's gotten very little cooperation. All he's gotten is a notice of violation, followed by another letter saying we're no longer holding it in abeyance. That was signed by the building inspector, but the building inspector in that letter, he goes back to this violation. He says, now we're reinstituting the June 17 violation, which is not valid. So what I want to do is I want to offer you, or not, an olive branch. And my client has already shown good faith. I know, Michael, when we spoke today, you've noticed a lot of the trailers have been removed.
Yes.
He's going to continue to remove those. He's not bringing in any more, he's just getting rid of them as he can. He's going to continue. He's beautified the property. If you look in the front, he's taken it upon himself to put in some mulching and some bushes. Yeah, it looks good. He doesn't have to do this. He's done it. He's done this, his family's been here for 100 years, farming. Finally, he purchased, as Ken said, he went and purchased another site to get out of the village. He's been dying to get out of the village. He doesn't want to be in the village. So what I've never been able to wrap my, because we represent towns. And if an attorney comes to us and he says, look, we're trying to get out of here. Give me an opportunity. Give me 60 days. and Kelly will explain to you where we are on the town application. Give us some time. This is a neighbor who's been a farmer his whole life. The family's been a farming family the whole life. Give them a chance to get out. What are we doing? You know, we're all neighbors here. I work here. I've been here since 1989. I'm sitting here going, this is wasteful. And if we're gonna litigate this, I don't understand, I would want the taxpayers to understand what's being litigated, because their money is being wasted. It's pathetic. So, again, I come and I say, look, it's up to you. We can do this the hard way. It'll be painful for the village because you're gonna waste a lot of time. And you can mark my words, remember my words, because when we're back here next year, if we're not already, we'll be out of the village. But if we're not, just remember when we are back here, when I said, yeah, look, there's snow on the ground. So I don't care if David is the one to give you the advice or not. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care if he's the one to say, yeah, this is a problem or not. It doesn't matter. It's up to you. If we want to try to resolve this, where you give us some time to get out, we're willing to do that. We're willing to not raise this issue, but if you're pushing us, I'm raising it. And I want to make sure I've got this is being taped, right? And I reserve the right to get that recording. Because this is why you better have independent counsel. Okay?
All right.
So what I want to do is to show further great good faith. I just want Kelly, if you would, I want Kelly to explain to the board what it is, the extent. And remember, when Kelly's talking, he didn't buy this property till April. He was trying to get it as quick as he could. And what you should be impressed upon is the amount of work that he's done with the town to get out of here. He doesn't want to be here, okay?
Before that, could I just
Yes,
like to
all right.
respond to the,
Hi, Kelly, David wants
so,
to speak.
the issue of the village clerk, I mean, I don't know whether you're aware of it or not, but under the state building code, a contract building inspector cannot issue a notice of violation. It can only be done by a village official. And there's ample authority
David?
I'm just telling you, have you read the building code?
It could be done by a village official. I know it can't be done by the
What it
village
is
clerk.
it's a recommendation, it's gotta be done on a recommendation of the building. So that's where you're falling short on your analysis.
David?
Why don't you sit down and let me speak?
No, I'm not gonna sit down. I don't have to sit down.
This isn't a
I'll
debate.
listen.
I listened to you, I didn't interrupt you.
I won't interrupt. But I don't have to
Sit down, please.
No.
So,
we're not going to proceed then,
why not?
Jeff and, right.
Why not?
I-
I mean,
Well,
it's.
If Jeff doesn't
this
sit
is-
down, you're,
No, no,
If he
no,
doesn't interrupt, is
that's
that
fine. It's
acceptable
just-
enough?
It's just rude, I'm sorry. I let him speak, I didn't say a word, and you're just being rude. Sorry, but that's fine, stay there.
all right,
So,
all right.
yeah, so I just, and a village official can sign notices of violations. It's
Mhm.
very clear. I've got ample authority for that.
Mhm.
And if you want to brief the issue, I'll brief the issue and we'll provide it to the ZBA. It's an important issue. I mean, what Mr. Rothschild is suggesting right now about, an olive branch, that's not your jurisdiction. I mean, you're here to interpret a zoning violation and whether or not there's a farm, and they're throwing all these collateral issues up that have nothing to do with the merits of this, which is that Mr. Johnson, the village gave him a stay to allow him to go to Ag and Markets. That happened last year, and he did that, and we knew he did that. What we didn't know is that in October, they turned him down. We didn't know until January or February when we did, and the only reason we did know is because we did a FOIL request. And then the thing started again, and again, they wanted to do a reconsideration, they wanted to be in abeyance, and we said, no, we're not doing that, we gave you one, you didn't, you know, do what we would have expected you would do, which is to let us know what was happening with the application. And again, Ag and Markets came back and said, this is not a farm operation, it's a mercantile operation, it's selling crops. And Ag and Markets doesn't normally side with anybody other than the farmer. I mean, and that's, you know, but the village was willing to, you know, to listen and to abide by that probably if that had happened, but it didn't. They were turned down twice, and they made arguments about you know, properties off-site that they claimed that they were exclusive providers, and, you know, Ag and Markets saw through that and said, no, that's a purchase agreement. You know, you don't lease a de facto lease because you're buying stuff from 50 different farms across the country. I mean, they advertise all kinds of different grain and produce. So it's, you know, it's clearly, it's been deemed to be a commercial operation. It's not entitled to the protection of the Ag and Markets law. And so therefore, the village zoning laws apply. So that's,
All right.
you know.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Dave. So,
You know, I do want to, David had said that the issues I raise are, I forget the word you used, David, but it was.
Collateral.
Collateral? To say that the violation notice is collateral to the issue is just
I'm not talking about that issue.
Well,
I'm
but that's
talking
what I
about-
raised. You said the issues I've raised.
I've
You
been
said,
too
well,
collectively.
right. Well, I'm telling you, that's not collateral. That is the complaint. That is the underlying, that's why we're here. And I'm gonna tell you now, it's up to you, but I don't wanna guarantee, but we will go to court on this. It won't be in the village of Pawling, and it won't be in the town of Pawling. It will be probably Dover. That is a defective notice. And David's words were clear. He didn't say the village clerk. He said a village officer can issue it. He didn't say a village clerk can sign the notice of violation. And there's a
That's what I
good
meant,
reason.
though.
Because the village clerk doesn't have that power. And it makes sense. It makes sense. The village code, again, talks about the building inspector having the right to enforce the zoning code. That's it. That's it. End of game. It's not that difficult. It's not that difficult. And this idea that David wants to argue this other side is just the essence of what Ken is talking about. That's not the role. That's not the role to argue against us. The role is to advise you on legal issues. I could say a lot of things, but I'm gonna tell you right now, this is not the way you treat a neighbor who is trying to do the right thing. The fact that Ken or Chris didn't offer that letter from, why would Chris give the village a letter that says from Ag and Markets, right, that we don't see that you're afforded the protection of the right to farm laws? Why would he give that to the Ag and Markets didn't give it to the village. They didn't give it to the village either. They made you foil. That's not, if I was his lawyer at the time and he had come to me, I would have said, no, don't give it to them. Why? Why? What lawyer would say, oh yeah, give them something that's damning to your case? That's silly. That shows a lack of good faith. That shows a lack of, no, he's listening to counsel, I'm sure. And everything he's done besides that is not even an issue. That you cannot hold against somebody who's being prosecuted at the time. No, he's not gonna offer that freely. But what he is gonna do is try to get his ass out of town. And that's what he's doing. He's heading out. He's gone. Just give him a chance. That's all this is. This is not, if you want your pound of flesh, you're not gonna get it through this proceeding. You're not gonna get it.
all right.
So, it has nothing to do with a pound of flesh or a pound of, this is about just adhering to the zoning laws. the village board passed a resolution authorizing the village clerk to sign notices of violations upon the recommendation of the contract building inspector. That's consistent with the state code that contemplates that. It's consistent with New York State law that allows for village clerks to sign notices of violations, and, you know, so, it's not, anyway, that's, and again, I don't believe that it's the role of the ZBA to be making a deal with the applicant. I mean, it's just a matter of, you know, complying with the law. I mean, it's been, the trailers have been building up over the years, up to where they were, you know, there were 50 of them, I believe, you know, and so that's been going on for years. And so it has been, you know, I think the village was quite patient, and
It's a shame.
and then, and even when the violation was issued, they gave them an opportunity to see what Ag and Marks would say. And they said, you know, they said no.
All right.
Thanks. Jeff? you-
Go ahead, Michael, but I want to make sure we reserve the right to have Kelly come up.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you want Kelly to speak
Well,
now?
it's up to, if you want to speak
Yeah,
first.
if Kelly wants to speak now, then I would like to discuss this among the board and see where we go,
Okay.
all right?
And
Go
I
ahead,
think
Kelly.
Ed Larkin also has something
Yes,
to
and
say.
he is, but, all right, Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you.
Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. As Mr. Stenger and Mr. Rothschild had indicated, the applicant, Eastern Hay, has purchased property in the town of Pawling. I think Ken Stenger showed you the location of the property. As I'm sure you all know, buying property in New York isn't, you know, done overnight, and so that process started in the fall of last year. It was a long process, and so he closed on the property in April of this year. He tried to make application to the town as a contract vendee to the planning board during that process, actually submitted documentation to the town planning department, met with the town to try to advance that in February, to advance the application. And the sellers, they required that we withdraw our application. They wouldn't allow us to submit as contract vendees. So we were encumbered to wait to get before the planning board until we actually closed on the property, which was April 6th. So we promptly got a new application in. We've had several meetings, pre-application meetings, so they're not the complete board with the town's consultants. And as Mr. Stenger had indicated, we're before the town planning board on Monday of the 16th of this month. So we hope that process advances. It sounds like the town of Pawling is very happy to have us and is willing to work with us in advancing that application. As soon as we're able to secure the final permits there, then obviously the business will be relocated to that site, and the trailers will be relocated to that site.
What has happened to the trailers that have already left? Where have they gone?
Most of them have been sold.
Oh, all right.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
most of those have been sold.
All right, thank you.
Will any operation continue on the property?
If you wanna answer that.
Yes.
Oh, you answer that.
In what capacity, David? Will there be operation?
I don't know, that's the
Will
question.
he continue to run his business so he can make a living? Is that?
I just asked what operations, are any
He
operations gonna continue on the
continues to
property?
sell hay, absolutely.
On the property?
A new location.
I'm just asking I'm asking about the current site in the village, what activity will remain, if any?
None.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's what we.
Well, no, all right. You have the development,
The big-
that's,
the
No,
big
I'm not
Yeah,
talking about
yeah,
that.
you're
I'm
talking about the hay,
any-
right,
any-
that's right.
Any of the current, none of the current use is
Right.
gonna continue.
that, the idea is, what?
We talked about Henshin is still gonna sell hay out of that building.
Even
fine.
after the site plan?
Well,
Yeah,
That's the front
okay, so to be clear then, if there is any hay selling activity going on, it will certainly be within the parameters of the right to farm laws. So we will comply and make sure that that hay is grown on farms that Ag and Markets feels is proprietary for us. So, in other words, we will not be, there won't be trailers on there. You won't even know but it will be protected by the right to farm law. We won't do anything that's gonna extend beyond the right to farm
So there won't be
protections.
there's not gonna be any grain, say like Purina or Top, whatever those.
I can't say because you're allowed to do a 60-40. It doesn't have to be all grown on site. There's a 60-40 ratio that the Ag and Markets uses, so that as long as you're selling 60% of your farm products grown on your property or grown on a proprietary property, you're within the right to farm law protections. And so I'm not gonna say that, David, but what I will say is we'll make sure we comply with the right to farm laws.
And get a sign off from Ag and Markets, because right now you don't have one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole idea. Yeah.
Mr. Rothschild, just one quick question. At this point, is there any hay of any kind grown on the property here in the village?
On that village?
Correct.
On that
For
property?
sale? Mhm.
I can't speak. I don't know.
Could I just, I mean, the way the law, you can sell hay if it's produced on that property or another property that you lease.
Okay.
So that's what,
And understand, he receives an agricultural exemption. He is a farm. I mean, there's an agricultural use going on that property. The assessor for the town of Pawling, who covers the village, has granted, and for years, and just recently, recertified him, and he's in an ag district on top of it. So he is, there's no question he's an agricultural use.
I'm not sure that's correct, Jeff. I mean, I
That
don't know.
in what sense? That he doesn't get an agricultural?
This just happened.
No, he has an agricultural
I understand
exemption.
that, I understand that, but he just was turned down in April by Ag and Markets. And, you know, the rules for the ag exemption are similar to you've gotta be.
So what do you think? Do you think he'll get denied next year in March?
I'm just saying that the standards are the same,
Okay,
so. you
that's
know.
looking for things,
Oh, my
David.
goodness.
That's looking
I
for
was
things.
just
I know.
responding to your,
That's silly though.
wow.
It is.
Mr. Steiner, you have something?
Yeah, I want, you guys are listening, it's great to be here, thank you.
You're welcome.
I wanted to say something that maybe it's legal advice, I'm not your lawyer. But you have a lot of discretion on how you approach these matters. There's a reason why in the cases I read, that the zoning board of appeals is the pressure release valve in many, many town controversies. The rules get bent a little bit, we give area variances or we give somebody something. You have a lot of discretion. We're not in a court of law. No one's being prosecuted here today. I was struck by the back and forth. I've never seen that before in a ZBA. You know, the attorney generally gets asked questions by you folks, and then they give the advice. They don't lead the charge, so to speak, as to what the outcome should be. So it's really ultimately in your hands, and you can make a finding tonight that everything before you is wrong, or you can make a finding, you know, we need to think about it a little further, or we can make a finding, you know, it's wrong, but I'm gonna give them 60 days to get out. I mean, you can do a number of things. And I just I wanted to compliment you and thank you for listening to me and taking what I had to say seriously. But I'm watching you and I see how seriously you're taking your job. And I think, you know, one of the things that happens in these kind of confrontations is that the ZBA is really the glue of the town. I usually see you in towns, not villages. But you're there to kind of adjust it so that there's a solution that doesn't necessarily cause pain. Unless, of course, pain is warranted. And here I leave it to your discretion. I just wanted to say to you that you have that power, and when you talk about what to do next, that you consider it as part of your deliberations when you reach your conclusion. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd just like to say something. Jeff Rothschild brought up some kind of dire consequences that could happen if we, depending on how we proceed with this, if we proceed contrary to what he is advising. I want to just talk to the members of the board and see how you feel right now. Ed Larkin, our building inspector, wants to give a presentation about what's going on. And do we take the next step and go on to that, or do we just say, well, that's it,
I think I'd like to hear from Ed Larkin
Yeah.
before we actually have a discussion amongst ourselves
Yeah.
about things after we
Right.
get a
Just
fuller
wanna-
picture of
just wanna
evaluating.
make sure we're all still on the same
I'm good with,
page here. All right.
I'd like
Ed,
to hear from Ed.
Could you proceed then?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Seven Shop over here, I apologize, got a couple things with me tonight. First, and just briefly, I do wanna, speak to the, initial discussion about the legality of the way your building department is enforced here in Pawling. Part 1203 of Title 19, New York State Code of Rules and Regulations defines how building departments can operate at the local municipal level. You can contract with a consulting firm, which, as you know, we are, provided we have the same qualifications. I'm a New York State Certified Code Enforcement Official, which meets those qualifications. The way it's written is I cannot execute any formal document. That's a building permit, that's a notice of violation, that's a certificate of occupancy. That has to be done by a public officer. The terminology is a public officer. In the village of Pawling, as you know, a small community, your public officers are not always readily available. Your clerk, who is a public officer, is the most available, accessible individual, which is why that's the individual who has been appointed, able to execute documents when she has written recommendation for myself. So that's the procedure. It is defensible at the state level. So please take solace that we did set this up correctly and we are following state requirements. The rest of what I will go through here relatively quickly is the process of how we got here. Our role, again, as your building official, involved investigation of violations or excuse me, investigations of complaints. This started as a complaint associated with the number of trailers, which has been brought up a lot tonight. After this first component of it, you're not gonna hear me talk about trailers, that's not what this is about. I visited the property on March 16th, and to clarify, I visited the public area around the property. We were not invited onto the property, therefore we did our assessment from the public ways. We established what we could see from the public way, including the number of trailers, the presence of products, both brought on site, purchased, packaged. There was some products there that were delivered, commercialized, and in trying to assess, once we completed our investigation of the compliance of the site, you have the property maintenance code, which is enforceable. One chapter of the fire code is enforceable, and then as it pertains to the site, that's typically regulated by a site plan approval process. So things like transportation, vehicles, curb cuts, and that would all be regulated under your site plan approval process. When I tried to pull those documents in order to see if there was any enforceable action on the property owner, I realized that this property from a site plan approval and building permit approval process had been exempt under the agricultural law. So that was our starting point. We subsequently set up a meeting with Ag and Markets because that's their jurisdiction. That's what, as the applicant has said tonight, this property has functioned within an agricultural district with both tax and other agriculture exemptions since it was constructed back in the early 2000s. So I didn't want to make any determinations without talking to everyone. Ag and Markets informed me that they could not make a formal determination unless we issued a violation and then sent the applicant to Ag and Markets. So the violation that was issued was a prerequisite to the applicant being able to go to Ag and Markets, state their position, and have Ag and Markets, who is the authority in this case, making the determination, give their determination. That is what we did. That took place, I believe, the rejection letter came in October 15th. But we've referred it to Ag and Markets through the violation process, which was what we were instructed to do, and that started the process down this road. So in summary, this all commenced in research of due diligence of a complaint. The violation was issued as a requirement to start a process which involved Ag and Markets, who was ultimately the authority, who has, I believe, twice now in letters on October 15th and April 12th, informed the applicant that their current operation does not meet agricultural exemptions. And as it stands, you have a building which is occupied by the public in the village of Pawling that has not gone through the appropriate site plan approval and building permit process, and that needs to take place in order to ensure that the building is safe for occupancy. And that is what we're focused on, making sure the building itself is safe. At this stage, we're not talking about trailers, we're talking about ensuring you have a safe building in your village. So that's where we are.
If I could just add, just so I don't forget, I mean, the documents that were emailed to you, I'd like to make sure those are entered into the record. I did provide a copy to Mr. Rothschild as well.
All right.
And happy to answer any questions after you deliberate.
And you don't have to deliberate now, you can,
Yeah.
so, and again, I would suggest that, given the dichotomy between what Mr. Rothschild said and what Ed Larkin said, what I was saying, that you may wanna get something in writing so that everybody's, so it's not hyperbole, it's the, you know, the black letter law and the interpretation, so.
That's fine. I would say, I'm gonna read, I think it's important that we know what the duties of the village clerk are. I wanted to just gloss over it. I'm gonna read you the statute so that you understand exactly what a village clerk can do. This is it, okay? The clerk of the village, of each village shall, subject to the direction and control of the mayor, A, have custody of the corporate sealed books, records, and papers of the village, and all the official reports and communications of the Board of Trustees. B, act as clerk of the Board of Trustees, and each of the Board of Village officers shall keep a record of their proceedings. C, keep a record of all village resolution local laws. D, prepare, sign, transmit to the village treasurer an order directing the village treasurer to pay the claims therein specified. That goes on. I'm not gonna read the whole thing. E, shall during office hours as prescribed by the Board of Trustees on demand of any person produce for inspection the books, records, and papers of his office, etc. F, shall collect taxes and assessments of the village as provided. G, shall keep an index record of all written notices which he shall receive of the existence of defective, unsafe, dangerous, or obstructed condition in or upon, or of an accumulation of ice, snow upon any village, street, highway, bridge, culvert, etc. H, he may administer the oath of office to all village officers. And I, and this is it, shall also perform such other duties not inconsistent with his office as shall be determined by resolution of the Board of Trustees. So unless you fit this, or there's a resolution saying, you know what, the village clerk.
There is a resolution.
I wanna see the resolution.
There is.
I wanna see it.
Yeah, I
I
will.
wanna see the resolution. Because, you know what, David, if there was a resolution, why didn't Jonathan Barr David give it to Ken when he wanted to see the authority for the village clerk to sign the notice of violation? What he got from Jonathan Barr David was a recitation of the village code that said she can serve it. He never said, hey, here's the resolution. Here's the resolution. If he had it, he should have given it to him. He didn't.
I'm here now, and I'm telling you there is a resolution.
Yeah,
and we'll be
well,
able to-
it's not on the record,
Well, you just-
and we
you
asked
just
for
made-
it.
you just
We
made
did
our-
ask for
You
it.
just made our case, Jeff.
We
That
just
last-
asked for it.
I'll just say to you that last sentence is just solidified.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff, I
All
appreciate
right.
that. Good job.
Yeah,
All right.
thanks, David.
Glad you were honest about that.
All right. This is not actually a public hearing, but we have some members of the public here, we can open it up, if we can.
I'll move to open up a public hearing for anybody who would like to express their concerns
Do you have a second?
before we discuss things among ourselves.
Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Okay, anyone, Andy?
I'd like to say
Yes.
something. I've been a neighbor of the Henson property.
I'm sorry, can you
for-
state your name, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Andy Durkin.
Yep.
I have a house, a green and white house, immediately north of the Henson property. Very fond of Chris's parents for 40 years that I've had the house. Got along great with them, never had a problem. But all of a sudden, he acquired a house which wasn't in the ag district, tore it down, making a compost pile, and it is unsightly. I don't live there, but I have people living there, and they want me to get involved with an attorney, and they say they're getting black mold. They're afraid to go outside. It smells. It's not on the property. I haven't called Chris because I didn't want to cause that, but I mean, it's not not part of the ag district. It was a private residence. He tore it down. He's starting this big compost pile on it. I wouldn't be in favor of him expanding this if that's what it's gonna be.
Leaving, he's leaving the site completely.
This just started. But you said there's gonna be trailers there, I mean, so,
Are
and
you
there's gonna
talking
be
the town, or are
hay
you talking the village?
in the village.
No, the village, all the trailers in the
In
village.
40 years, sir,
Well,
there's
let me
never
just-
been a hay compost pile there.
Let me be clear on the question with the trailers. The trailers are leaving as soon
Okay.
as we get permission from the town to move them. We went out and spent, well, I didn't, but they did, I think, 2.7 million to buy that property, so they can move this out. Now, it
I'm
is.
very happy for them.
No, I'm very happy for you that they're moving, because it's clear, I hear you very clearly what you're saying to me. The best solution, we're all lawyers, and we all have, you know, this rule and that rule and this rule and that rule, but the bottom line is, the sooner everybody gets out, the sooner the problem is solved, right? He's moving, he's invested the money, half of those are out now. As soon as the town approves that parcel, and I can tell you, that you have to go through the planning board first, but the zoning administrator said the proposed use at that location in the town is acceptable under the town's code. I can tell you that, I read the minutes of the meeting. But, so he's moving, he's not staying. I don't know anything about a compost, but I can tell you right now, it
On
needs to
your way
come out
home
with that.
tonight, I don't know, you go out East Main Street and take
Yeah.
a look in Henson. It's not on the original farm property. He tore a house down. It was on a residential. It's not part of the, what was the original thing, deed
It's
to
It's on
his
Hitchin
church?
Lane.
If you
It's
give me,
on
if you
Hitchin
give
Lane.
me your name and number, what I'll do is I'll speak to Chris Moore and I'll call you.
Kelly knows it,
Will that work?
sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
But you know, I don't know about internal combustion. I don't know about fire hazards. I didn't want to call the health department. I didn't want to do
Your
any of that.
concerns are well placed, and I'll get some information tomorrow and call you back.
Thank you.
Is that all right?
It'd be great.
All right, great, thanks. See, that's
Smiles.
work between neighbors, right?
Making progress.
Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you.
I'm surprised no one noticed it.
I don't with you.
Anyone
Very
else have any
surprised.
comments? No? Okay. All right, last call. All right, I make a motion to close the public hearing. Let's keep it open, just in case we adjourn this and come back, so.
Well, you can have this is really, it's not a public hearing, it's public comment, so
Public comment.
you have the right to do that anytime you
Okay,
want,
all right.
so.
So we're gonna close the comment, yeah, that, pile that Andy brought up, I've noticed that it's in some places up to 5 feet high as you go down Hinchin Lane on the left, and there's another small 3-family apartment house down in the back. These people have to drive by that to get to their house.
I just don't know if there's a public health issue with black mold.
Well, I'm gonna look into this tomorrow.
I mean, it looks like somebody's cleaning out horse barns, and there's horse manure and straw.
I think
and
it would be the
smells.
hay from the trailers, wouldn't it be?
I don't know, no.
I don't
That's
know.
where I'm guessing it comes
But
from. or
get some
they're
information, and
spoiled.
I'll get you some information and call you tomorrow.
Sure.
Yeah,
And
it's-
if anybody on the board
it's
wants
not-
that
it's
information,
not
I'll fill you
in
in
the,
too.
What was the agricultural area? It was in a, what was it, was a 3-family residential house.
Yeah, it's not even
In
on
the
the farm.
B2 zone. I mean, you can't be just dumping horse manure and things there, so. All right.
So we don't need a motion to close the comment?
No, we're not,
Okay.
we're just keeping the comments for if anybody comes later, so. Like to discuss this anymore, or we can,
Sure.
wanna discuss it? I really think that we should, hold a decision off for a while until we can kind of mull this over and, bring it up, later.
I agree with that. Can we just reframe what we're talking about here tonight? What are we gonna mull over?
What are we gonna?
Tonight, the decision is whether the notice of violation should be invalidated based on an improper interpretation of the zoning, that the zoning law, they've asked for determination that the zoning law did not apply. And it was based on farm operation, I believe, that was the, you know, that they, and it really hasn't been talked about a lot. So they have raised a technical issue, which is certainly their right, and that's something that I think, you know, the attorneys should submit in writing so there's no misunderstanding about, you know, what's being presented and what's being said, instead of, you know, it's back and forth. It probably wasn't very helpful, but,
So Dave, is that the only issue then, is an interpretation about whether the clerk is authorized to sign paperwork? under the advisement of a certified inspector by the state. Is there also the issue of, are we interpreting whether or not we accept the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets decision about that being agricultural uses?
Absolutely.
So there are two
Yes.
issues.
Oh, yes, of course.
That's what I thought.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
I just wanted to be sure, because I was pretty,
Yeah.
I thought so, and I wanted to make sure I was on the right
No, that
page.
was-
I think we expanded a little there.
So there are two interpretations before the board.
All right, so I think at this point, we are going to adjourn the meeting, and we can bring this up at a later time when we've been able to think
When
about
would you like,
this.
when would you like
Well-
submissions for the, you know, the stuff that I was talking about?
Well, we have another meeting in 2 weeks.
So before that, like 10 days
Yes.
from now?
Yeah, could do that.
Okay.
All right? Okay. All right. Is there anything else before the board at this point?
No, we don't have any minutes to approve.
No, we have no minutes, right?
We only have one
Okay,
thing.
yeah.
To be clear, what are we looking for? You want more submissions, or what are you looking for, Mike? I wanna make sure.
We're just, I think we took in a lot of information right now,
That's fine,
and we just need a little time.
that's fine.
It
Okay,
is-
I didn't know if
this
you were
is-
looking for
it's-
something
it's
from me.
Complex, no, I don't think,
Okay.
I don't think there's anything
That's
else
fine.
we need to do.
David, did you feel that you need any additional paperwork from the council?
No, tell me.
From?
No, I know what his argument is. I'm just
Mhm.
gonna, you know, I just
Okay.
wanna make sure you've got clarity on exactly what the position is based on what Ed was saying and I was saying, and
Yeah.
there's more support for it as well.
I mean, I feel like I've got plenty of information tonight. We've had a lot of discussion, but if people feel that there's some advantage in waiting, I won't go against that. If there's an if you feel that there's an advantage in us waiting on a decision,
Yeah, I'd like to make sure there's a full record for the,
Okay.
you know, for the issues that were discussed that I frankly thought had been resolved, so.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
all
All
right.
right, so at this point then, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move that we adjourn.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Brent seconds, all right, all in favor?
All right.
Aye. All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all
Thank you.
for
Thank you.
your time tonight and your information.